Harlem, New York. 9:17 p.m. Thursday, October 15th, 1957. The temperature hovers at 38 degrees. Rain has been falling for 6 straight hours, turning the streets into black mirrors that reflect the neon glow of after-hours clubs and corner barbershops. The air carries the scent of wet asphalt, Lucky Strike cigarettes, and the metallic tang of impending violence. Outside Minton's Playhouse on 118th Street, 3 black Cadillacs sit in perfect formation, their engines idling in synchronized rhythm. Chrome bumpers gleam under streetlights. Exhaust pipes breathe white vapor into the October night like mechanical dragons. Inside the middle vehicle sits Ellsworth Raymond Johnson. Bumpy, 52 years old, 6 feet of controlled power wrapped in a charcoal wool suit pressed sharp enough to draw blood. His hands rest motionless on his knees. His eyes scan the street through rain-streaked windows, calculating distances, measuring angles, cataloging faces. Next to him on the leather seat sits a mahogany box, 14 inches long, 8 inches wide, 6 inches deep, hand-carved. Brass fittings, a kind of craftsmanship reserved for family heirlooms or final farewells. But this box doesn't contain cigars or jewelry. Inside, cushioned by crimson velvet, lies an object that will redefine the power structure between Italian organized crime and independent black operators within 72 hours. A message carved in wood and brass, a promise made tangible. 4 hours earlier, at 5:23 p.m., Lucky Luciano's enforcer delivered an ultimatum that crossed every line of respect in the underworld. The message was simple, brutal, and deliberately humiliating. Luciano, operating from his exile in Italy but still pulling strings in New York through his underbosses, wanted 40% of Harlem's numbers racket, not as a partnership, as tribute. The enforcer, a Sicilian named Sal Maranzano, made the fatal mistake of adding his own editorial commentary. He called Bumpy a neighborhood errand boy playing dress-up. He said Harlem belonged to real bosses now, not uppity-colored help who forgot their place. He laughed when he said it. The sound echoed in the smoky back room of the Cotton Club like a death rattle. Bumpy said nothing during the meeting. He didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten, didn't negotiate. He simply stood up, buttoned his suit jacket, and walked out. The silence he left behind was heavier than any ultimatum. His lieutenants knew what that silence meant. The streets knew what that silence meant. Within 2 hours, a carpenter in Brooklyn received a rush order. Within 4 hours, the mahogany box was complete. Within 6 hours, the brass nameplate was engraved with surgical precision. The inscription reads, Charles Lucky Luciano Final Notice. Now, at 9:17 p.m., Bumpy sits in that Cadillac holding a coffin with Lucky Luciano's name on it. Not a full-sized coffin, a miniature, a promise in mahogany, a declaration of war written in brass and velvet. The rain continues to fall, the engines continue to rumble, and somewhere in a Manhattan penthouse, Lucky Luciano has no idea that the next 72 hours will teach him a lesson about respect that no amount of money, muscle, or Sicilian tradition can erase. By Saturday morning, 3 of Luciano's most profitable operations will be reduced to ash and federal investigation. By Sunday afternoon, his most trusted enforcer will be in the hospital with a message carved into his forehead. By Monday evening, every boss in the 5 families will understand that Harlem isn't territory to be conquered. It's a kingdom. And kingdoms don't pay tribute to invaders. They bury them. The story of how Lucky Luciano learned this lesson is a warning that history has tried to hide. If you enjoy these deep dives into the underworld, you can support the channel by buying me a coffee using the link in the description. Your support keeps these investigations alive. Now, let's go back to October 14th, 1957, 24 hours before the coffin was carved. Manhattan, New York, October 14th, 1957, 2:30 p.m. The penthouse suite sits 42 floors above street level, thick with cigar smoke and quiet desperation. Lucky Luciano stands at the window, his reflection ghosting across glass. Behind him, 3 underbosses sit in leather chairs, pretending counsel while knowing the decision is already made. The air smells of stale tobacco and the particular tension that comes when desperate men pretend to be powerful. The numbers spread across the mahogany desk tell a story of systematic collapse. Luciano's exile to Italy has carved 60% from his New York revenue. Distance has transformed him from operational king into remote strategist bleeding money through every filtered command. Dock rackets cut by federal investigations, heroin shipments slowed by maritime inspections, gambling joints shuttered by ambitious prosecutors. The old reliable streams are clogged by law, ambition, and time. For a man like Luciano, there is only one answer: find new water and own the river. Harlem's numbers racket appears as salvation. $2.3 million annually, untaxed and unreported. To Luciano, it looks like abandoned money on an unsecured table. In his mind, independent black operators are background noise, tolerated chaos that needs Italian hands to impose order and collect tribute. The racial calculation is simple and poisonous. He believes skin color and social status make Bumpy vulnerable to intimidation. A black man in 1957 America, no matter how feared on his own streets, still walks through a system built to keep him in line. Judges, cops, bankers, politicians, almost all white, many reachable by envelope or blackmail. But history has shifted under Luciano's feet without his notice. His intelligence is incomplete, filtered through lieutenants who underestimate anyone outside their ancestry. Reports about Bumpy's organization are casual notes, not detailed dossiers. No one explains that Bumpy has been quietly preparing for Italian taxation since 1955, studying their patterns, measuring their greed, calculating their arrogance with accountant precision and chess player patience. The year 1957 represents perfect collision. Federal pressure forces Italian families to retreat and consolidate, while Harlem hardens under Bumpy's systematic consolidation. What Luciano sees as scattered neighborhood crews is actually unified territory with coordinated defenses. He's planning simple invasion against a general who has already memorized his battle plan. The conversation around the table is brief. Partnership is dismissed immediately. Luciano doesn't negotiate with people he considers beneath him. The decision crystallizes into humiliation rather than economics. Sal Maranzano will deliver the ultimatum. 40% of all numbers revenue, effective immediately, plus ongoing protection fees. The terms are designed to establish dominance and teach lessons about hierarchy. Luciano makes his decision as if he remains untouchable. No respectful sit down, no shared slice. He wants 40% as tribute, a reminder that no money moves in New York without kissing his ring, even from across an ocean. To deliver this message, he chooses Maranzano, a man who confuses cruelty with strength and bigotry with intelligence. Luciano leans forward, hands flat on the desk, looking directly at Maranzano. The words come slow and deliberate. Make sure he understands this isn't a request. It's a courtesy notice. 40%, or we turn Harlem into a graveyard. Maranzano smiles, already tasting the satisfaction of humiliating a man he considers beneath him. He has no idea he has just accepted the last assignment of his career. October 15th, 1957, 5:23 p.m. The back room of the Cotton Club operates under strict protocols that have governed underworld meetings for decades. Sal Maranzano kicks the double doors open, without knocking, without announcement, without the basic courtesy of requesting entry. This violation is calculated and deliberate. He walks into Bumpy Johnson's sanctuary like a landlord inspecting property he already owns, treating established territory like conquered land. No removal of hat, no respectful greeting, no acknowledgement of the 4 men seated around the mahogany table who stop mid-conversation to witness this systematic destruction of protocol. Maranzano approaches the table where Bumpy sits motionless, a glass of bourbon untouched before him. The Italian drops an envelope onto the polished wood, the paper sliding until it stops inches from Bumpy's hand. The ultimatum comes without preamble. 40% of all numbers operations, effective immediately. Additional protection fees for future Italian oversight of what Maranzano deliberately calls Harlem's disorganized colored operations. Every word is weaponized. He refers to the sophisticated banking network Bumpy built as cute neighborhood gambling, needing adult supervision. He uses the word boy 3 times in 2 minutes, each repetition landing like a calculated slap. The psychological warfare escalates beyond financial extortion into racial humiliation. Maranzano treats the complex mathematical operation of policy banks like children playing dress-up with real money. He calls Bumpy's lieutenants errand boys and suggests their community is soft, unprotected, vulnerable to outside correction. Then he crosses the line from business dispute into community terrorism. He implies violence against Harlem civilians. Shopkeepers might experience unfortunate fires. Church ladies might get caught in crossfire. Children walking to school might encounter accidents on corners where cooperation is lacking. The men around Bumpy's table go rigid. Hands drift toward waistbands. Jaws clench. Marcus, a lieutenant with scars and short temper, starts to rise from his chair, murder written across his face in capital letters. The temperature drops 20 degrees as 4 men calculate the distance between themselves and Maranzano's throat. They wait for one word, one nod, to convert the Italian enforcer into a memory on the floorboards. But Bumpy raises one hand, palm flat, fingers together. The gesture is small and absolute. Marcus sits. Everyone goes still. Bumpy's philosophy of smart violence dictates that every reaction must serve multiple strategic purposes. Killing Maranzano now would feel satisfying for 30 seconds before triggering full-scale war with limited tactical advantage. Immediate violence is emotional, and emotion is fatal weakness. To kill a messenger in rage is bad strategy. Bumpy stands slowly, buttoning his suit jacket with methodical precision. He doesn't look at Maranzano, doesn't acknowledge the envelope, doesn't respond to any provocation. He simply walks toward the door, his men parting to let him pass. The ultimate dismissal. As Bumpy's hand touches the brass doorknob, Maranzano cannot resist one final act of humiliation. "Hey, boy, don't make Lucky come up here and teach you some manners." The slur hangs in the air like toxic smoke. The room freezes. Time stops. Bumpy stops walking, but doesn't turn around. The pause stretches into eternity, into threat, into promise. When he speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper, forcing everyone to strain forward. "Tell Lucky I'll send him my answer by midnight." The door opens. The door closes. Bumpy is gone. The clock starts ticking toward consequences Maranzano cannot imagine. Brooklyn, New York, October 15th, 1957, 7:45 p.m. The woodshop sits below street level, accessible through an alley that most people walk past without noticing. Clarence Washington has operated this space for 32 years, crafting furniture for Harlem's elite and occasional special projects requiring discretion and artistry in equal measure. The air carries the scent of cedar shavings, linseed oil, and varnish. When Bumpy Johnson steps through the door, Washington recognizes immediately that this commission will be neither furniture nor ordinary. Water drips from Bumpy's coat onto sawdust-covered floorboards. The request is specific and urgent. A miniature coffin, 14 inches long, mahogany construction with brass fittings, completed within 4 hours. Washington asks no questions, because questions are dangerous and unnecessary. He simply nods and begins selecting wood from his premium stock, hands moving with practiced efficiency despite the impossible deadline. For 20 years, whenever Bumpy needed wood to speak louder than bullets, he came here. Tonight carries different weight. A miniature coffin represents psychological warfare more chilling than direct threats. A full-sized coffin suggests immediate killing, hot blood, angry reaction. This is calculated differently. A small coffin is an advance reservation in death's appointment book, representing future planning and the terrifying patience of a man who thinks in chess, moves rather than emotional responses. It tells Lucky Luciano that his ending has already been imagined, measured, and designed. The recipient is already dead in the sender's mind. Execution merely awaiting convenient scheduling. Washington engraves the brass nameplate with jeweler precision. Charles Luciano. Below that, 2 words. Final notice. The death date remains conspicuously blank, an empty space that screams louder than any filled information. The absence speaks volumes. The date exists in Bumpy's mind, selected and scheduled, waiting only for Luciano's next move to determine timing. This is not threat. This is inevitability documented in brass and mahogany. The contents transform symbolic gesture into psychological masterpiece. Bumpy places 3 items inside the crimson velvet interior. A miniature bottle of Luciano's favorite Sicilian wine, proving intimate knowledge of his target's preferences. A deck of marked cards, the exact brand Luciano's casinos use, suggesting operational intelligence. Finally, a single dead rat, dressed in a tiny custom-tailored suit, complete with miniature tie. The rat represents Luciano himself, dressed in respectability's trappings, while remaining fundamentally vermin. The symbolism is brutal and unmistakable. While Washington works, Bumpy composes a formal letter on cream stationery. His handwriting is precise, his grammar flawless, his vocabulary sophisticated. The language demonstrates education that contradicts every racist assumption Maranzano voiced hours earlier. The tone is corporate, almost friendly, which makes the Coffin's presence infinitely more menacing. Every element communicates that Bumpy operates with precision, intelligence, and strategic planning, matching anything Italian organized crime deploys. Every detail serves psychological warfare. The wood, brass, engraving, contents, letter tone announce that Bumpy operates with precision, not emotion. No yelling, cursing, or empty boasts. Only structure, symbolism, and deadlines. He is not outraged. He is organized. October 15th, 11:58 p.m. The coffin sits complete, brass fittings gleaming under fluorescent lights. Bumpy lifts it carefully, testing its weight. "This isn't a threat," he tells Washington, voice quiet and certain. "It's a promise, and I always keep my promises." 2 minutes until midnight. Manhattan, New York. October 16th, 1957. 12:15 a.m. Genovese's restaurant on Mulberry Street operates as Luciano's primary nerve center, where business masquerades as dinner and hierarchy is enforced with linen napkins and quiet nods. 12 made men occupy various tables. 4 enforcers stand near the bar. 2 capos sit at the head table, finishing veal and wine. The air carries cigar smoke and the particular confidence of men who believe themselves untouchable in their own sanctuary. Bumpy Johnson steps through the front door alone, carrying a mahogany coffin under his left arm like a businessman with a briefcase. No backup visible, no entourage, no show of muscle. The audacity defies every rule of underworld survival. Conversations die mid-sentence as he crosses the threshold. Forks freeze halfway to mouths. Wine glasses pause in the air. The room transforms into a photograph of collective shock as this solitary figure walks through their sanctuary, carrying what looks disturbingly like a small casket. Bumpy walks in an unbroken line toward the head table where Capo Anthony Salerno, 300 pounds of Genovese authority, sits with red sauce on his chin and confusion spreading across his face. Without asking permission, without hesitation, Bumpy sets the coffin down on white tablecloth directly in front of Salerno. Brass fittings gleam under chandelier light. The engraved nameplate faces the capo directly, Charles Luciano. Final notice. When Bumpy speaks, his voice cuts through silence with surgical precision. "This is for Lucky. Tell him I'm returning his ultimatum with interest. He has 72 hours to withdraw his demand and apologize publicly. If he doesn't, this box gets bigger." The words land with courtroom formality, stripped of emotion, delivered like a legal notice. That clinical neutrality makes them infinitely more threatening. He is not angry. He is scheduling an outcome. Bumpy turns his back on 18 armed men and walks toward the door at the same measured pace. His exit is more insulting than his entrance because it demonstrates utter lack of fear. He leaves them frozen in confusion, unable to process the violation of their territory. The door closes. The room explodes into chaos. Chairs scrape. Voices overlap in shouts of rage and disbelief. Salerno stares at the coffin like it might detonate, his face purple with fury and something resembling fear. Within minutes, Salerno is on the phone to Italy, his explanation stammering through safe lines to reach Luciano. A black gangster walked into Mulberry Street alone, delivered a miniature coffin, and walked out untouched. On the other end, Luciano listens in cold disbelief, then erupts. Fury shakes the transatlantic connection. Rather than recognizing a worthy adversary, he sees only insult requiring immediate correction. No negotiation, no pause for strategic assessment. His wounded pride demands escalation. October 16th, 1:30 a.m. The retaliation order moves through channels with mechanical precision. 3 enforcers receive their assignment, hit Bumpy's main numbers bank on 145th Street, destroy the operation, demonstrate consequences. They load weapons and drive toward Harlem, confident in their mission. What they cannot know is that Bumpy has been tracking their movements since leaving the restaurant. They believe they are hunters moving against prey. They are walking into a carefully prepared demonstration where they will become the lesson instead of the teachers. October 16th, 1957. 3:15 a.m. 3 enforcers step through the door of Bumpy's gambling house on 145th Street, expecting chaos and finding order. They anticipate terrified faces, scrambling runners, easy intimidation. Instead, they discover a room arranged like a courtroom. Men at tables continue their business. No panic, no weapons drawn. The enforcers mistake this discipline for weakness until the trap closes around them with mathematical precision. Bumpy's men move from predetermined positions, not with guns, but with overwhelming numbers and superior planning. Pressure points, joint locks, systematic disarmament. Within 90 seconds, all 3 Italians are on the floor, wrists secured, weapons confiscated. No shots fired, no collateral damage. Just demonstration of organizational superiority that leaves the invaders questioning every assumption about Harlem's capabilities. The interrogation happens in a basement office, not a torture chamber. Bumpy doesn't believe in pain for entertainment. He believes in information. Systematic questions extract operational intelligence, which trucking companies launder money, which restaurants serve as meeting points, which police captains accept the thickest envelopes. The enforcers provide answers because silence offers no advantage against someone who clearly already knows most details and seeks only confirmation. By dawn, Bumpy possesses more accurate intelligence about Luciano's weakened empire than many of the Italians' own captains. October 16th, 6 a.m. The coordinated counterstrike begins across 3 targets simultaneously, each strike timed for maximum impact and minimum bloodshed. Target 1, Luciano-controlled trucking company in Queens that launders approximately 40,000 monthly through phantom deliveries. The warehouse burns at 6:15 a.m., flames consuming vehicles but leaving select financial records positioned for federal investigators. Anonymous calls ensure authorities find the evidence quickly. Target 2, Midtown Restaurant, serving as secondary meeting point for Italian operations. At 6:30 a.m., health inspectors arrive for surprise inspection, discovering violations that materialized overnight. Spoiled meat, pest infestations, health code breaches severe enough to warrant immediate closure. The restaurant is padlocked by city officials before lunch service begins. Target 3, Captain Michael Donnelly of the 14th Precinct, 20-year veteran accepting Luciano money since 1952. Internal Affairs receives anonymous package containing photographs, bank statements, and detailed logs of corruption. By 10:00 a.m., Donnelly is suspended pending investigation, his protection evaporating instantly. Each strike demonstrates precision calculated for maximum financial and reputational damage without unnecessary casualties. Bumpy weaponizes bureaucracy more effectively than bullets, attacking infrastructure rather than soldiers. No bodies, no headlines about gang warfare. Just systematic dismantling using legal mechanisms and documented evidence. At noon, the 3 captured enforcers are released exactly where they were taken. Each man carries one broken finger, cleanly fractured but non-crippling. Each wears an identical note pinned to his jacket, handwritten in controlled script. 2 warnings left. Choose wisely. October 16th, 4 p.m. Reports reach Luciano in Italy through panicked phone calls. The trucking company is destroyed. The restaurant is closed by authorities. The police captain faces federal investigation. Financial losses exceed $300,000 with future exposure unknown. More dangerous than money is humiliation witnessed by other families who only respect strength. Luciano faces binary choice: acknowledge Bumpy as equal and negotiate, or escalate to lethal force. Pride makes the decision. He orders a hit on Bumpy Johnson, authorizing final measures. It will be the last strategic mistake of his career. October 17th, 1957, 2:30 a.m. 2 Sicilian hitmen cross into Harlem territory, driving a stolen Pontiac, their movements precise and professional. They carry suppressed Beretta pistols and 20 years of combined killing experience across 3 continents. Their instructions are surgical. Locate Ellsworth Johnson, eliminate him publicly, leave his body as a message about Italian authority. They believe darkness and unfamiliar territory provide adequate cover. Within 15 minutes, they discover how catastrophically wrong professional assumptions can be in a neighborhood that operates as a living intelligence network. The surveillance begins before they finish their first reconnaissance pass. A newspaper vendor notes their hesitation at intersections. A diner waitress memorizes their faces through plate glass windows. Children playing on stoops catalog their license plate and clothing. Information flows through Bumpy's network with efficiency that would impress federal intelligence agencies, moving from street level to headquarters faster than police dispatch systems. By 3:00 a.m., Bumpy possesses complete intelligence. Their location, weapons, tactical approach, and the fatal flaw in their operational planning. Instead of retreating to fortified positions or deploying counter-assassination teams, Bumpy makes a decision that separates strategic thinking from conventional gangster responses. He chooses public theater over private violence, transforming an assassination attempt into community demonstration. At 8:15 a.m., as Harlem awakens and streets fill with workers heading to jobs and children walking to schools, Bumpy steps onto 125th Street alone, positioning himself in clear view, adjusting his cufflinks with deliberate calm. The hitmen spot their target immediately and exit their vehicle, hands moving toward concealed weapons with practiced efficiency. They expect chaos, panic, easy execution. Instead, they encounter something unprecedented: collective silence. Dozens of community members stop walking, creating an invisible ring of witnesses. Shopkeepers step onto sidewalks. Windows fill with faces. The neighborhood itself seems to inhale, generating atmospheric pressure that freezes the gunmen's hands for the critical seconds Bumpy requires. In that moment of hesitation, Bumpy closes distance with controlled speed. The first hitman draws his Beretta, finger moving toward trigger, before Bumpy's hand redirects the barrel skyward while delivering a precise wrist lock that snaps bone with an audible crack heard across the street. The second professional attempts to clear leather, but finds Bumpy's fingers around his throat, applying pressure that cuts oxygen without crushing windpipe. Both men are disarmed and neutralized within 12 seconds, their weapons now in Bumpy's possession, their training insufficient against someone who understands violence as surgical instrument rather than blunt trauma. The public humiliation transcends personal revenge and becomes community statement. Bumpy forces both men to their knees on the asphalt in front of 50 witnesses, traffic stopping, the moment suspended in collective observation. He doesn't demand apology to himself. Instead, he requires them to apologize to Harlem itself, to the neighborhood they entered planning murder, to the community whose children might have witnessed their intended violence. The words taste like ashes in their mouths, their professional dignity destroyed more thoroughly than bullets could accomplish. The message sent back is surgical and permanent. Using a straight razor with jeweler precision, Bumpy carves 4 words directly into each man's forehead, the blade drawing thin lines of blood that spell, "Final warning delivered. Next time I keep the box." The scars will remain visible for life, walking advertisements of consequences that no amount of makeup or surgery can erase completely. October 17th, 10:00 a.m. The 5 Families Commission convenes emergency session as other bosses pressure Luciano with economic reality rather than wounded pride. Bumpy's precision strikes have disrupted shared operations affecting multiple organizations. The trucking company laundered money for 3 families. The restaurant served as neutral meeting ground for inter-family negotiations. The corrupt police captain provided protection for collective interests spanning the entire commission structure. Everyone is hemorrhaging money because Luciano's arrogance demanded war against an adversary whose capabilities he fundamentally miscalculated. The reality check arrives through cold mathematics. Luciano possesses no winning moves remaining. Bumpy has demonstrated superior intelligence, penetrating Italian operations at multiple levels, community support providing early warning systems no amount of money can purchase, and tactical precision matching anything the commission deploys. Continued escalation guarantees mutual destruction, with Luciano absorbing disproportionate damage while federal attention intensifies on all families. October 17th, 8:47 p.m. The phone rings in Bumpy's office, the overseas connection crackling with transatlantic static. Lucky Luciano himself, calling from Italy, his voice tight with controlled fury and forced pragmatism. The conversation lasts exactly 90 seconds. No shouting, no empty threats, just quiet acceptance of new territorial boundaries. When Bumpy hangs up, he looks at his lieutenants with calm satisfaction. Lucky just learned the difference between fear and respect. Class dismissed. October 18th, 1957. The formal withdrawal arrives through commission intermediaries rather than direct communication, preserving what remains of Luciano's dignity while acknowledging complete strategic defeat. Capo Anthony Salerno delivers the message during a brief meeting at a neutral Bronx diner, his voice carrying the weight of institutional humiliation. The language wraps surrender in diplomatic cloth, describing the entire episode as territorial misunderstanding and regrettable miscommunication between independent enterprises. No direct apology appears in the document, but the absence of Italian operations in Harlem after October 20th speaks louder than any written admission. Luciano's 40% demand evaporates, as if never spoken. The financial accounting reveals devastating asymmetry. Luciano's operations absorbed over $400,000 in direct damages, the trucking company destroyed, the restaurant closed permanently, legal fees mounting for the corrupt police captain's defense, plus intangible costs of damaged reputation and lost future revenue streams. Insurance premiums increase, bribe costs escalate. Business partners view Luciano as liability rather than asset. Against these losses, Bumpy's side shows 0 casualties, minimal expenditure, and strengthened position. The entire war was won for less than most families spend on a single funeral. The miniature coffin cost $60 in materials and craftsmanship. The strategic brilliance lies in how Bumpy won a war without starting one, executing what military theorists describe as limited war with maximum gain and minimum kinetic force. He refused to respond to every insult with reciprocal bloodshed, instead targeting systems rather than soldiers, wallets rather than hearts. By weaponizing intelligence, community support, and bureaucratic mechanisms against an opponent who expected only street violence, he converted Luciano's strengths into vulnerabilities. He didn't act like a gangster defending turf, but like a sovereign nation defending borders against invasion, maintaining moral high ground while achieving tactical superiority. The ripple effect moves through the underworld with quiet inevitability. Other ethnic organizations across New York study the Harlem lesson with careful attention. Irish gangs in Hell's Kitchen, Jewish syndicates in the Garment District, emerging Puerto Rican operations in East Harlem. They absorb the same message that some territories cannot be conquered through traditional intimidation or superior firepower when the target possesses community integration and strategic thinking matching any opponent. Respect becomes cheaper than conquest. The myth of Italian invincibility cracks, revealing that unified local resistance led by intelligent leadership can repel even the most powerful organizations. For the community, the impact transcends organized crime politics and touches daily life for thousands of Harlem residents. Independence is preserved without the neighborhood becoming a battlefield. Local businesses continue operating without paying protection money to outside organizations. The numbers racket remains under local control, with profits circulating within the community rather than extracted to Manhattan penthouses or Italian villas. Children walk to school without witnessing escalating violence. Parents send them to school knowing the streets remain stable. Bumpy's victory is measured not just in defeated enemies, but in preserved economic self-determination. The legend building begins immediately as the miniature Coffin story spreads through underworld channels with mythological speed. Each retelling adds embellishment. The coffin was lined with gold instead of velvet, contained actual body parts instead of symbolic items, was delivered during thunderstorms rather than calm October evenings. The core truth remains regardless of exaggeration. One man walked alone into enemy territory carrying a coffin and walked out untouched. His message delivered, his ultimatum accepted. Historically, this confrontation establishes the template for successful resistance to organized crime expansion, proving that superior firepower and traditional mob structure could be defeated by intelligence, community integration, and strategic precision. The miniature coffin sits on Bumpy's shelf, brass nameplate still gleaming, death date still blank. It never needed to be filled. The threat was sufficient. Real power is measured not by who kills the most people, but by who makes the most powerful man blink first. Bumpy understood that principle. Lucky Luciano learned it. Harlem remained unconquered.